Hello, for this tutorial I want to talk about the left hand frame when playing violin and viola. So the first thing when playing is to make sure that you have a nice setup in holding your instrument like this. So some teachers like to have them going from like a resting position to this, and then you can start talking about the left hand frame. One of the common things that you'll see in young students or new violinists and violists is either this with the wrist overextending towards the scroll, or the wrist collapsing and holding the instrument like this. This affects your left hand because if you're like this, it's a lot harder to play in tune and it's more uncomfortable. So in order to make sure that you have a nice hand frame, the first thing is to make sure that you have a proper setup. Make sure students are using a shoulder rest. This helps them sustain the instrument without tensing up too much or feeling that they have to grab the instrument with their left hand. So once they have a nice setup, you can then talk about left hand. So one thing that you can do is have them relax their arm, kind of shake it out, and then bring it around and just place it like that, a nice natural motion. You want your thumb to be on the other side of the neck. We don't want to be grabbing onto it and pressing too hard. We're not holding the instrument with our left hand. So this motion again, and then you can take it off and do it again. There's no need to press, so there's no concern for intonation right now. This is just the motion to get your left hand over here. One important thing to note is your wrist, right? Earlier we talked about having your wrist like this or like this. You want to have it nice and neutral, and tap your thumb. And now another thing, or I guess the next step would be putting your fingers down when you're playing different notes. Some people press a lot or don't really know where the motion comes from. So one thing that is helpful is extending your fingers outwards and then going like this, doing this motion, kind of like hitting it that way without moving your thumb. The motion is basically coming from this place. I think it's like knuckles is a term that they use. So you're not coming from here or right, so from here like that. So if you do that, then you can start to make the motion smaller. So without coming far away from the fingerboard, which is this black piece of wood here, you can start doing that, and that'll give them a pretty nice setup for the left hand. One important thing to note is your elbow and thumb. So depending on which string you're playing on, they're going to be in slightly different locations. This is an exaggeration, but let's say if I'm on the lowest string, my elbow is going to come a little bit more forward, and if I'm on the highest string, it's going to come a little bit more to the back. So this is also another exercise that might be helpful to show students that there is a little bit of a variation in position depending on where you're playing. So to recap this, we're talking about left hand frame. The first thing is to set it up. You have a nice posture, and the first exercise you're going to do is to relax your hand and then bring it over here. You want to make sure your thumb is not pressing and that your fingers are curved and your wrist is nice and straight. The second thing that you can do is this motion, right? So up and down. And then the third one is going to be on the different strings, taking note of where your elbow and thumb are. So if you're not pressing with your thumb, you'll notice that there's maybe a tiny bit of movement there. And then students can play a finger pattern or a scale if they're ready for that. So again, nice, neutral, and then this. And I'm just gonna play open 1, 2, 3 to demonstrate the motion. And and that is a little lesson on left hand frame. Cool.